Okay, our doors are opening. I'm gonna give it a moment, let people get in. Good morning, Patsy. We're starting to see our list fill up. It's kind of like our doors. It's like the party. You know, we've talked about this before on Village Chat. You open the doors, see who's there. We'll give it just a moment and let the doors get open. And then we will get started because we have a really full day today. Very full day.
Right, we all do.
We all do, because if you can't tell by what's on our table here and my Purdue gear, it's Purdue Fan Day at the Village.
Boiler up.
Usually watch.
Well, we have 20 for this series. There's 32 who are registered, and some people join us live, and some people wait for the video because maybe they can't get to it live. So
that's good.
And then it goes out to all the residents as well. So. In all reality,
oops.
In all reality, a couple hundred by the time it's all said and done.
Oh my!
You're West Lafayette famous.
Is it something that goes? Well, we don't get an email saying that we've gotten it.
The girls put out. They have like a schedule for it for this particular series, so it'll go out. To everybody, and I think they're going to put it on channel 91. Okay.
Oh my!
So everybody's here.
Which should we know that?
So good morning. This is Village Chat. It's Tuesday morning. My name is Candace Swick, if I haven't met you, and welcome. We have a very fun day planned today. It is a fun day at the Village because, as I said a minute ago, it is the official Purdue Fan Day. So we're all in our gear. Minus these two. And I'm looking out of our window as they're setting up for the events later on this morning, actually, for lunch. Dog and Suds will be coming, the Purdue Twirlers, the Dusters, the Dancers.
Gold Dusters.
The Gold Dusters will be coming. Purdue Pete will be on site, and the train.
Wonderful.
The train will be here. And then Coach Katie.
Oh, it's the Boilermaker special.
The Boilermaker special. Forgive me. Coach Katie will be here before supper for some brews and corks, beer and wine.
Got that.
Cocktail hour with some players from the women's basketball team to answer questions. So I hope you ladies plan to come back over to the dining room for Crossroads Dining Room. They'll be in there.
Plan to do that
at 3:15. So that it's a fun day. A lot going on. And if you could see on the other side of our door here, there is a giant Purdue balloon arch that's waiting to go outside when we're done for a photo op. It's huge. It is a 14-footer.
Oh my!
Balloon arch. So that was fun to put together. Yes, late yesterday we did that.
Was it all your own blowing?
Yes, with the machine.
Oh, okay.
Yes, they have blowing machines now.
Okay.
Yeah, otherwise I think we wouldn't all be here today. I would be home like knocked out. So
no, we'd just be here.
You would just be here by yourselves. So this is a fun day, like we said, but this is also a fun day because, you know, this whole series is we called this the Faces of Westminster. And we really wanted to introduce different residents, employees who do interesting things or have led interesting paths in life. And so I asked Carolyn and Mary Alice. So Carolyn Jones, Mary Alice Nebold, welcome. Westminster residents and Purdue graduates.
No.
Wait, I'm wrong.
Employee,
not graduate, right? Graduate. Okay. Employee, graduate, employee, not graduate. See, I was wrong. I should have remembered that. Anyways, so you ladies have something really fun that you're going to share with us, a little performance, if you will. So we're going into the past. So we have
many years.
Purduites, if I could call you that.
That's right.
Purduites, past and present today.
That's right.
So these two beautiful ladies are going to be sharing a past conversation with us. I don't want to spoil it. I'm going to read an introduction, and then when we're done, we can ask you some questions about how this came about. But, you know, just kind of sit back, grab your coffee, and let me introduce. As a part of Purdue's 150th anniversary, the Purdue University's Retiree Association turned back the clock and brought 9 university-related historical characters to life. 2 of them, Amelia Earhart and Lillian Gilbreth, are here today. Both were brought to Purdue in the mid-1930s by President Edward Elliott on one-year visiting appointments to be role models and help women students expand their horizon, consider the possibilities, and aspire to professional careers traditionally held by men. It's just amazing in its own right there. Amelia Earhart, nicknamed Lady Lindy, was the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. She also was the first woman to fly nonstop across the US. Lillian Gilbreth, a renowned industrial psychologist and engineer, was owner and head of Gilbreth Incorporated, a leading international engineering management and consulting firm. While known professionally as the mother of modern management, she also was the mother of 12 children, no twins, born just 16 years apart. So that means she spent 12 years pregnant. Wow. Perhaps you've read the book or seen the movie, Cheaper by the Dozen. She's the mother of that clan. Who knew? While living on campus, Amelia and Lillian often spent evenings together. So imagine you're eavesdropping on the conversation following a busy day's work between these 2 American legends, Purdue icons, and very good friends. Ladies, thank you.
Oh, she's right. It's really been a busy day. I spent most of the morning working with Dean Potter and his faculty. We're putting together new courses in human factors for the engineering students. Then in the afternoon, I taught my industrial psychology class and spent about 2 hours with Dean Mary Matthews over in home economics. I have a contract with GE, and I'm working on kitchen design and design of kitchen appliances. And I thought this might be a wonderful opportunity to involve some of her faculty and students in what I'm doing. Then this evening, I had dinner with 4 students. And part of our conversation, we talked about you.
Me?
You. You know that women students on campus really aren't very excited about not being able to wear slacks on campus. They want to do that. We know little Margie, that redhead sort of spitfire that's got the freckles. Well, she decided to take things in her own hands. She went directly to Dean Stratton and said, "Why can't I wear slacks like Amelia Earhart does on campus?" And she reported that Dean put her finger up and pointed her and said, "Margie, when you fly the Atlantic solo, you can wear slacks on campus too."
Oh my. That's a good reason.
That's right.
Well, Lillian, I marvel at all of the things that you have accomplished. But how in the world did anyone with a bachelor's and master's degree in British literature and a PhD in psychology become an engineer? Whew.
If I had to summarize it in one word, my reason for that, I'd say love.
Love?
Love. I planned to be a teacher. I love to read, and so I thought British literature would be a good major for me. After graduating from the University of California, 3 girlfriends and I went to Boston to celebrate. 2 weeks later, we took off, and 3 weeks in Europe. While in Boston, which we found out was a real haven for young people like us, I met Frank Gilbreth. And whoa, we really had a good time together. Upon returning from Europe, who should be waiting for us at the pier but Frank? I stayed in Boston for a couple more weeks, and oh my, those sparks began to fly, and we really had fun together. Oh, it was heavenly bliss, but I had to get back home to start grad school. A 2-year long-distance romance ensued. Shortly after graduation, Frank and I were married, and we moved to New York City, which is where he lived at that time.
Tell me about Frank.
Well, professionally, Frank began as a bricklayer. Then he progressed into construction. Yeah, then he progressed into construction manager, and finally became a contractor. But he always was possessed with finding the one best way to make things work. So obsessed, he started his own consulting firm, Gilbreth Incorporated, which focused on helping companies increase efficiency and productivity in the workplace.
But how did he manage to do this?
Well, to measure efficiency, he developed what he called time and motion studies. He visited factories, he took movies of machines and the operators, and then he recorded the time it took to complete the various tasks with it. Then he'd bring these films home and analyze them, determine where adjustments should be made to speed up the manufacturing process and increase productivity. As I watched him begin to do this, I started to notice most of his attention was on the machines. Very little of it was directed toward the comfort or the efficiency of the workers. So very quietly, I began to bring this to his attention.
So what was his reaction to this?
Fortunately, he agreed. Gradually, we became professional partners. Frank continued his focus on studying mechanical efficiency, while I used my background in teacher education and psychology to analyze the efficiency and the effectiveness of the workers. Unlike Frederick Taylor's approach to scientific management, which focused solely on the mechanical side of output, we found through our research that human factors, such as the levels of stress, fatigue, and motivation, also had a major impact on factory productivity. We spent the rest of our professional lives together developing research-based recommendations and management practices and promoting them all across the United States and even abroad. After Frank unexpectedly passed, I took over the firm and continued to work. To my great surprise and pleasure, I was named an honorary member of the Institute of Industrial Engineers and voted a full member of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. And that's how and when I became an engineer. Had it not been for love, though, heaven only knows where I'd be right now, teaching British literature rather than sitting here with my friend Amelia Earhart and talking at Purdue University.
I'm glad you're here.
So am I. Glad you're here. But you know, all this makes me wonder, Amelia, how did you get interested in flying?
Well, as I look back at the time it had happened, I wouldn't have thought this. But when I was a child living in my grandfather's home in Atchison, Kansas, my sister and friends built a roller coaster.
A roller coaster?
A roller coaster.
Oh,
and it
goodness.
started from the roof of a building in the backyard, went along the fence, and looked like a roller coaster. And I was the one that took the first ride.
Uh-oh.
And I fell. The roller coaster kind of got messed up. We rebuilt it. And then it was like flying. And I remember I said, I feel like I'm flying. But then my father, who was an attorney and worked with the railroads, had to move a lot. And so then a couple of years later, we were living in Iowa. And he took us to the state fair where they had planes. But to me, those planes looked like wood held together with rusty wire.
Were they?
They were contraptions. I didn't want any part of it.
Well, I can understand why.
So go ahead a few years, and I was visiting my sister in Toronto. And it was near the end of the First World War. And there was a need for people to work in hospitals as nurses or nurses' aides. And so I took a Red Cross nursing class and I worked at Spadina Military Hospital.
You were a nurse?
I was a nurse's
I
aide.
didn't know that.
And I talked with veterans, military men who were there, who were recovering from their injuries. And many of them were pilots. And so they told me all about how they flew on their missions in the war. And that kind of piqued my interest a little bit.
I see why.
And then, as I told you, my family moved a lot, and my father was then in California. And so I went out and we went to an air show. And my father really worked hard to convince me that I should take a 10-minute flight with this pilot.
Oh, I can understand how you felt.
It didn't take 3 minutes. And I was hooked.
Oh,
I was
my
going
goodness.
to fly. And I arranged to take lessons so that, and they were not cheap, of course, at that time. And so I took lessons from a woman pilot because I didn't want to feel intimidated by taking lessons from a male pilot.
Good decision.
That's right. And so I took lessons from Nita Snook. And after about 6 months of lessons, I was so proficient at flying, I felt, that I had to own my own plane.
Oh my.
So I bought my Kenner biplane. It was a Airster biplane. And I nicknamed it the Canary because it was a bright yellow. So that's what brought my interest in flying.
Oh, you really were hooked.
I was hooked.
Bright yellow. Did it have Purdue written on it?
No, it didn't. Unfortunately, just the Canary.
Okay.
But we need to go back to you because you mentioned about Frank's death, as untimely as it was. That must have been very difficult for you.
Oh my goodness, it was. Not only because we lost our dearly beloved husband and father, but also because he's the one that brought in the lion's share of income for our large family. At the time, the oldest of our 12 children was 19, and the youngest was 2. To stick together as a family, I was going to have to work full time and often be away from home. Otherwise, our family would need to split up and move in various relatives, all over the country. And most of mine were in California. When the Gilbreths have family matters that need to be discussed, we call a family council meeting. Each member, regardless of age or speaking privilege, has speaking privileges, and each one has 1 vote if they'd like to use it. The night after Frank died, it was terrible. I called a meeting. After explaining our situation, I told the children we'd discuss and make a decision the next day. Following morning, I reconvened the meeting, and the oldest was the first to speak. She reported they'd all talked it over. They'd stayed up real late that night, which was unusual for them, and unanimously agreed they wanted and they were willing to do whatever was necessary to keep us all together.
What a family.
And then Anne went on and said, we have a plan. The 4 oldest are going to take care of the 4 youngest, and the 4 in the middle will take care of themselves with it.
Oh my.
And then she went on to say, Mama, we will do whatever we have to do to keep our family together. And then she added, we have 12 votes, Mama.
Oh my.
What's yours? Oh my goodness, with tears in my eyes and heart so full of gratitude, I said, make it 13.
makes tears come to my eyes.
2 days later, I was on a boat headed for Europe. The trip was smooth. The speeches really went quite well. And many of our current clients who attended signed continuing contracts. In addition, I signed 5 new agreements and also made many new contacts. Oh, the trip back across the ocean, however, seemed like it was taking forever. I thought that boat was just sitting out there in the middle of the pond because I was so anxious to see my children. It had been 5 weeks to see them again. Now, as we approached the pier, I looked down and there was Anne. She was there just as Frank had been 23 years ago to pick us up. This time, however, we were headed to our family summer home, which we bought several years before in Nantucket. As we drove in and onk, onk on the horn, and out they came. Young Bobby wearing that cute little sailor suit and hat that his 5 brothers before him had worn, screaming, "Mama, mama, mama, cheeky pops, cheeky pops, cheeky pops." And then that was followed by the really biggest group hug that I have ever been part of. Oh, that just smelled so good. We were back together again. Now, it wasn't until later that evening that I asked Anne, what did Bobby mean? Cheeky pops, cheeky pops. And she then broke the news to me. She said, "Mom, I wasn't going to tell you until later. While you were gone, all 12 of us got the chicken pox." "Oh, mercy, Maud," I said. "What did you do?" 12 chicken pox. She said, "Mom, don't worry." She said, "I called the doctor and let him know about it. And he stopped by every 3 days until we were all well. The neighbors heard about it and they brought food in. We had plenty to eat." And she said, "You got to remember Grandma," that would be my mother-in-law, lived in town. So she came over and helped us out too. To make a long story short, the children proved that they could survive without me. And the continuing contracts plus all the new contacts I made me feel that I think I can keep Gilbreth Incorporated afloat. So as we talked about this, what a celebration we had afterwards. Simultaneously, all ran to the water. We jumped in, we were dunking each other. It was great because the 13 of us proved we were going to be able to keep our family together.
What a wonderful thing.
Oh,
that you all made.
It was. But I've heard that you have several outside interests other than outside of aviation. I'd like to know a little more about those. Tell me.
Well, I've had several interests in my lifetime. I have an interest in medicine, and it probably started back when I was in high school, because we moved to Chicago when I was a senior, and I chose my high school at Hyde Park High School because of the science labs. They didn't look like just a kitchen sink. And then I enrolled in science classes at Columbia. I took the Red Cross nursing class. And as I mentioned before, I worked at Spadina Hospital. Mm-hmm. So that interest in medicine continued. But then when I took my first flight in California, I had to have some way to pay for those lessons.
Well, that's true.
So a friend and I started a photography company. And that lasted for a short time, but I enjoyed being a photographer. As a matter of fact, I was a photographer on the first flight across the Atlantic when I went as baggage. And I took the photographs the first time from a plane to the ocean.
Oh, that must have been something.
I also enjoy writing. I call myself a poet. I love poetry. I love
I'd like to
write
read
it.
some of that sometime.
Sometime I'll show you my one poem called Courage.
Ooh,
You would enjoy that.
I know I would.
Unfortunately, I've submitted several for publication and the rejection letters have come back. And then I have been a clothing designer.
Clothing designer?
For the active woman.
Oh my.
I had them under my label. My label, looks like I've signed my name at a slant on the label in the back of the garment.
So an autograph then.
I autographed it.
Wonderful.
And my line has been sold at one department store in each of 32 cities across the country.
Oh my goodness.
Like in Chicago, Marshall Field's, like Macy's, but those are the department stores that we chose to sell my line.
The upper end.
Upper end. And then I've been a social worker, and that's probably where my heart has been. I worked at Dennison House in Boston, and I especially appreciated and enjoyed working with immigrants in helping them to learn about how the country worked, how to read, how to write, how to communicate.
I bet that'd be fascinating.
And
You
that's
should have
where
been a
my
teacher
heart
like
is.
me.
Well, that's true. I could have been. But Lillian, it's getting late. I always enjoy chatting with you.
Oh, I do too.
But tonight I have to prepare for tomorrow's test flight in my, quote, flying laboratory to check out some of the equipment that they've installed in my plane out at Hangar 1. So we'll talk again.
I look forward to that. Hope things go really well tomorrow for you.
Thank you. I'm sure they will.
Well, thank you, ladies, for taking us back in time. That was so interesting. I had no idea. No, now I want to go look up. I was thinking while you were saying that about the clothing line, I'm like, I wonder if I could Google that. Like, will I find her clothing?
There's a label, an actual label in the archives at Purdue.
No kidding. I mean, how industrious that these women were.
Yeah.
And ahead of their time.
Weird.
That's
And what I thought was interesting was how President Elliott was really ahead of his time.
He certainly
in
was.
Supporting, women in business and women moving ahead. It kind of gives me chills. I had no idea.
Well, and how much fun it had to have been for them too, working with these students.
Yeah,
and
it's
watching
really
them open their eyes,
shape the future.
Yes,
yes.
Look what we could do.
Look what you can accomplish, and I love all those children. That's insane.
All of them.
Oh my goodness. Anyways, that was so neat. So, tell us how long have you been at Westminster? Let's start with that. Some people might remember meeting you before, but you both moved in at the same time.
1 day apart.
1 day apart.
15th
Next door.
I was first.
15th of September. I was 16th.
2016?
-6 from 22.
Was it
16?
You got
it. 16. Okay. So hybrid residence, one of the first. And what brought you to the village? Just really quick. We don't have a lot of time, but I want to share that with why here?
Well, we were next door neighbors for 25 years and really close friends. Kind of took care of each other. 2 only children, no family anywhere near here with it. So we started talking about what are we going to do when we really get old? We can't mow the lawn. We can't shovel the walks. We won't be able to do this, that. And we came pretty much to the conclusion that we were going to have to go somewhere where there's new construction because we wanted to stay next door to each other. So there was an ad in the paper to Westminster was building these hybrids. And we said, wonder what they're like. So maybe I ought to go up. Well, I'll go look at them. And so we did. And on the way home, we said, well, we're not well ready for anything of this sort yet, but maybe we ought to put our money down. So we did. And we said, well, okay, if we're going to be next door neighbors, we got to go there with our checks at the same time, and boom, boom, we got them in, one right after the other. And we did that. And about 6 months later, and we thought it was going to be 4 years later, we got a phone call. Why don't you take it from there?
And they said, your number has come up.
Oh.
Come up and talk with us. Well, as usual, we had put our materials in our file cabinets, out of sight, out of mind.
Hadn't looked at them.
And hadn't looked at them. So we decided that we better think about this. Well, you can be assured, in the 5-minute drive from our homes up here, we talked a lot, and we decided that if we got in the same building, it would be okay. And we didn't know at that point whether building 2 was even going to be built. And if we got on this in the same tower, that would be even better. And if we got on the same floor, oh my, that would be the cherry on the Sunday. And Dawn had this book, and she said, oh, I forgot to erase. Someone called about an hour before saying they wanted to postpone their selection. And so she erased that, and we saw two open units right next door to each other. And we said, we didn't look at each other, we didn't talk, we just said, we'll take them. Well, then they had to know, whose name to put on which unit. Oh, hey, we hadn't looked at any floor plans. We didn't know what they even looked like. So we said, we'll get back to you. We'll decide. And we decided that we were going to study our floor plans of the 2 units. And then couple days later, we would put on our choice on
who gets
piece
what
of paper. We didn't have a plan B. So if we had both chosen the same one, I don't know what it would have been. But when we turned those papers over, she had chosen her unit and I had chosen mine.
See?
And she chose hers because it had lots of windows on 4 sides. I chose mine because I wanted wall space for pictures.
There you go. And here you are.
And I have windows too.
So how did you
living happily ever after?
Living happily ever after. It's like the storybook. How did you come to be doing these reenactments? We've talked so many times about how much we love history and things like that. And this is just so, you had to research these ladies quite a bit, or did you already have a love of them and kind of know, like, how did this come about?
Why don't you start out, because you were the first one.
At the Purdue Retirees Association board meeting, Tom Turpin was introducing the fact that he thought we should have characters as part of the 150th celebration.
Okay.
And that, of course, a lot was being done for Purdue in the future, but he thought, some of the past history that had made an impact. So we met together to decide, various characters, but I was sitting across the conference table and he said, you should be Amelia Earhart. I had never done this in my whole life.
But you should see her in her Amelia Earhart costume. She'd walk in here and you'd swear it was Amelia.
Wait a minute, we missed out on a costume?
Yeah.
Because you're tall. Yeah, I could see that.
She's tall, the short hair.
Yeah.
So
facial features.
We got our costumes together. We decided on the number of characters. It took a while to convince Carolyn to come in as Lillian.
They kept telling me I was a character. I just had to figure out which one.
John Purdue, John T. McCutcheon, the cartoonist. Who else? Well, Mary L. Matthews, the first dean of home economics.
Orville Redenbacher.
Orville Redenbacher.
Oh,
he's a Purdue grad.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
He's pretty Aggie.
Played in the band.
Tuba player in the band.
But that's how it all got started.
Okay.
And we have done many presentations. And sometimes you just are there talking with people.
That is so neat. I just think how fun that you retire, you move to Westminster and you find these interesting things to do. I mean, there's no correlation, right?
But you know, this is so far out of my comfort zone, but it has been such a fun ride.
Well, I'm so glad that you found it.
Yeah, and for me, I had done a lot of backstage work, but I really hadn't done much performing. And I was a history major, so and I knew whatever character I did, I was going to have to spend a lot of time reading about them. I mean, I knew a little bit about her, but I thought to do a whole
to embody
program,
them.
Yeah, to embody them.
To feel like you were them.
About 45 minutes when we do the whole show with it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, this was a shortened version today. Yeah. This was just a little snippet. So I'll be sure to share with our viewers, if you ever have a program, you know, that the public is invited to, you should let us know and we can share it.
Okay.
I think that would be interesting. Well, thank you so much.
But we change our script every time.
Oh, so it's not the same thing. Well, that's wonderful. So it's like you're just these continuing, that is so much more authentic, because if you had met if you were really the ladies touring, giving conferences and talks, it would have been different every time. That is so interesting. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today. We talked about this about 6 months ago.
We did.
And we said, you know, there will come a time when this will fit right in. And I thought, you know, this Faces of Westminster, this series is perfect for this. So we really thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. We obviously have fun doing this.
Well, I had fun watching it. And at the same time I'm watching you, I'm watching outside as they're setting up for Purdue Fan Day, and I watched the balloon arch go out.
I couldn't believe the length of that.
It is, I'm like, oh, I'm cringing, like, oh, don't touch that branch it was going under. Well, I've been watching them do all the setup today.
I did too. And I was looking out there. It was just at the point where I lost my husband. Watching these balloons go. Carolyn, concentrate.
It was something to see for sure. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us from your homes. And we will see you next week. We have a special guest. It's actually one of our employees who also runs marathons all over the country. Stacey. And I was gonna leave it for, no, you don't know who it is. Surprise, because I think it's something you wouldn't expect. Like
That's right.
It was something that surprised me. I was like, what? Wait, what?
Yeah.
So she's going to come share about that. And I just think that'll be an interesting conversation next week. So join us then. Have a great week, everybody. I will send out the recording so you can share with friends or anybody else that you want to share this lovely conversation in the past with. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.